It is 6:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in a suburb of Cleveland. You pull into a drive-thru lane in a Honda Civic that has 180,000 miles on it. You do this 5 mornings a week. You have done it 5 mornings a week for 11 years. You roll down your window. The speaker is silent. You wait. Nothing. You look up at the menu board. It is dark. You pull forward slightly. The service window is closed. The lights inside the restaurant are off. There is a piece of yellow tape stretched across the entrance to the parking lot that was not there yesterday. You are not the first person to arrive this morning. A woman in a nurse's scrubs is standing beside her car with her phone in her hand, scrolling. A construction worker with a paint-splattered jacket is sitting on the hood of his truck. Nobody is talking. Everyone is checking their phones and finding the same headline. McDonald's Corporation, Chapter 7 liquidation, effective immediately. All 40,000 locations worldwide closed by court order overnight. You sit in your car for another 2 minutes before you pull out of the empty drive-thru lane and drive to work without breakfast for the first time in 11 years. By 9 that morning, this same scene has repeated itself an estimated 25 million times across the United States alone. Here is what McDonald's actually is, because most people think of it as a restaurant chain. It is not primarily a restaurant chain. McDonald's operates 40,275 locations across 118 countries. It serves 69 million customers every single day. In America alone, 1 in 8 adults have worked at a McDonald's at some point in their lives. It employs approximately 2 million people worldwide. Its annual revenue exceeds $25 billion. Its brand is the second most recognized on Earth after Coca-Cola. But the deeper truth is this: McDonald's is a real estate company that happens to sell hamburgers. The corporation owns the land beneath most of its franchised locations and leases it back to franchisees at a markup. This was the insight of a man named Harry Sonneborn in the 1950s, who told Ray Kroc that they were not in the food business, they were in the real estate business. That insight built the empire. Which means when McDonald's collapses, it does not just close 40,000 restaurants. It defaults on the leases of tens of thousands of commercial properties across every major American city and highway interchange. Prime real estate. Corners at every major intersection. Interstate exits in every state. Suddenly available. Suddenly worthless. Because nobody was ever going to want that specific building for anything else. The franchisees are the first wave of casualties. McDonald's is 93% franchisee-owned. This means the majority of those 13,500 American locations are run by small business owners who took out millions of dollars in loans to buy into the system. They paid the franchise fee. They paid for the buildings. They paid for the equipment. They mortgaged their homes. Overnight, those loans are attached to a franchise agreement that no longer exists. The brand they paid to license is gone. The suppliers they were contractually required to use are in freefall. The employees they were required to hire cannot be paid because the corporate systems that processed payroll have shut down. Thousands of franchisees, many of them second-generation operators whose parents built the location in the 1970s, face personal bankruptcy within 30 days. This is not a large corporation collapsing. It is thousands of small business families losing everything at the same time. The employees are the second wave. 2 million workers globally, roughly 800,000 in the United States. A workforce that skews young, skews low income, and often has few immediate alternatives. For many of these workers, McDonald's was not just a job. It was the first job, the one that taught them how to work. In the state of Illinois alone, more teenagers are employed by McDonald's than by any other single employer. When the checks stop coming, they stop coming for hundreds of thousands of families for whom that paycheck was covering rent or gas or the school lunch program supplement, or the phone bill. The Ronald McDonald House charities go into immediate crisis. This is the organization that provides free lodging for families whose children are receiving long-term medical treatment away from home. It is operated for over 50 years. It is funded significantly by the .net of my parent corporation and by donation boxes on every McDonald's counter. When those counters go dark, so does the primary revenue stream for one of the largest childhood illness support networks in the country. Families with children in cancer treatment, cardiac surgery, transplant recovery suddenly receive letters explaining that their housing arrangements are under review. A mother in Houston describes it later in an interview. Her 7-year-old daughter had been receiving leukemia treatment at MD Anderson for 14 months. The family lived 300 miles away. Every week, they drove in on Sunday night, stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, and drove back Friday. They had no other way to make the treatment possible. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. She read it in the hospital cafeteria and then walked back to her daughter's room and did not tell her for 3 days because she did not yet have another answer. There are thousands of this mother, not in the statistics yet, not on the news, but they exist, and they are trying to figure out what happens next, quietly, while their children sleep in the next room. The supply chain damage is the third wave, and it is agricultural. McDonald's is the largest single buyer of beef in the United States, not the largest fast food buyer, the largest buyer, period. It purchases approximately 1 billion pounds of beef annually from American ranchers. When it stops buying overnight, cattle operations across the Great Plains face the same question: where do they sell the beef? The answer is that they cannot, immediately, at anywhere close to the price they were receiving. Cattle prices collapse within a week. Ranchers who structured their operations around McDonald's specifications for decades now have herds that nobody wants at any reasonable price. Some of them start culling. Others sell at losses that end fourth-generation family operations. The same story plays out for potato farmers in Idaho, chicken processors across the Southeast, tomato growers in Florida, and dairy producers in Wisconsin. McDonald's was not just a customer. For many of these operations, McDonald's was the customer that made everything else possible, the lifeline contract that kept the operation viable through bad years. By week 2, the USDA is authorizing emergency purchases again. Same mechanism as 2020. Same pattern of American agriculture requiring federal intervention every time a single dominant buyer disappears. The consumer story that emerges is not the one the pundits predicted. The pundits assumed people would simply switch to Burger King or Wendy's or Chick-fil-A, and many did. But those chains cannot absorb 69 million daily customers overnight. Their supply chains, staffing levels, and physical capacity were sized for their existing customer base. Within days, drive-thru lines at competitors stretch around blocks. Wait times triple. Menu items sell out by mid-morning. Prices creep upward because demand is suddenly overwhelming supply. But the deeper story is about who actually relied on McDonald's most. It was not the customers ordering Big Macs for lunch. It was the working parents who fed their kids from the dollar menu on nights they could not cook. It was the elderly on fixed incomes for whom the senior coffee was a daily social ritual and the cheapest hot meal in town. It was the truckers who knew every location on every interstate. It was the families in food deserts for whom McDonald's was often the only sit-down establishment within 20 miles. A study from the University of Illinois found that low-income families in rural counties were disproportionately dependent on McDonald's for affordable prepared meals. Take it away, and there is not a straightforward alternative. Sit-down restaurants are 2 to 3 times the price. Cooking at home requires time, groceries, and equipment that many working families do not have surplus of. Food insecurity rates in the most McDonald's-dependent counties rise measurably within a month. Then there is the international dimension, which the American press does not initially cover, but which shapes the story over the following weeks. McDonald's is present in 118 countries. In many of them, it is more than a restaurant. It is a symbol of American economic reach. Its arrival in a country has historically been treated as a milestone of that country's integration into the global economy. When it exits, as it did from Russia in 2022, is a global news event. When it exits from all 118 countries simultaneously, it is a geopolitical earthquake. Governments issue statements, currencies move. Local franchisees in Mexico, Japan, France, Brazil, India all face the same crisis at the same time on the same day. Some of them buy the buildings and rebrand as independent chains. Most of them cannot. Congress convenes, not with the drama of a bank failure, but with an unusual coalition of rural representatives whose ranching constituents are being wiped out, and urban representatives whose franchisee constituents are losing everything. Emergency legislation is passed to provide short-term relief. The SBA authorizes expedited loans to independent operators looking to buy abandoned McDonald's locations and convert them into local restaurants. The USDA implements emergency beef purchases to stabilize cattle prices. And then something quieter starts to happen. The independent local restaurants that had been quietly dying for 4 decades begin to grow back. Not everywhere, not immediately, but in 1,000 small towns across America, the diner that closed in 1998 reopens under new ownership in the old McDonald's building. The family-owned Mexican restaurant that had been struggling to expand suddenly has a prime real estate opportunity at a corner it could never have afforded before. Community food halls emerge in converted locations. Regional chains begin to fill the geographic gaps. The 40,000 empty buildings do not stay empty everywhere. In the places where local economies were still healthy enough to support alternatives, alternatives grow. But in the places that were already struggling, the buildings stay empty. Reminders of what used to be there, still visible from every highway, quietly indicating what has been lost. Historian Václav Smil has written that the modern global economy has traded resilience for efficiency at every scale, from supply chains to real estate to labor markets. McDonald's was the perfect embodiment of this trade. Extraordinarily efficient at delivering identical products at identical prices to hundreds of millions of people every day. Extraordinarily fragile when any single element of the system failed. Here's what this means for you. The next time you drive past a McDonald's, notice it. Not as a restaurant, but as infrastructure. Notice how many cars are in the drive-thru lane at 7 in the morning. Notice how many teenagers are working the counter. Notice how the corner it sits on would be worth almost nothing without it there. You will not think about this often. Nobody does. Which is exactly why the story is worth telling. Because the systems that feel most permanent, the golden arches you have seen your entire life, the drive-thru lanes at every interstate exit, the paper crowns and the plastic toys and the endless dollar menus, are the ones nobody thinks to protect until the morning the speaker is silent and you drive to work without breakfast for the first time in 11 years. And nobody has an answer for you either.